Few years ago, I recall making a video about Bruce Ismay, who was the owner of White Star Line of Titanic fame. And in the video, I spoke about Ismay's legacy, the fact that he survived the disaster and, frankly, has been vilified by history. So I'm not going to repeat that video. I do believe that Ismay has been treated a pretty raw deal by history. I don't think he was quite as, how can we say, malicious as both big films, that is, the 1997 blockbuster and the 1958 Night to Remember, portrayed him as being a coward, as kind of sneaking his way onto a lifeboat. I think that was grossly unfair. There's another character of the Titanic connection that's certainly the second film portrays in a light that's not very flattering at all, and that is First Officer William McMaster Murdoch. Now, before I continue, just for the record, let me say I think James Cameron's Titanic is the greatest film ever made. I think it is an epic masterpiece. I love that film. It moves me every time, and I've never seen a film that comes close in sheer emotional. It just I love it. But as a Titanic enthusiast, my whole life, this side of it does interest me, and I still feel that may have been a mistake. It's very difficult for me to criticize that film because I really do think it's a masterpiece. But if anything could have been changed, maybe it would have been the scene where Murdoch, if you're familiar with the film, where Murdoch commits suicide after shooting a passenger, the composite character, um, Tommy Ryan. Um, Now, this is controversial because actually, what happened in 1998, such was the controversy in the small Scottish town of Dalbeattie, where Murdoch hailed from, and where he was very much seen as a local hero for years after the disaster because he died in the wreck. And any officer who did die was almost automatically seen as a hero. Um, there was significant controversy over that, to the point where the CEO, the vice president, I should say, of 20th Century Fox, Scott Neeson, who was of Scots descent himself, flew out to Dalbeattie to personally apologise to the nephew of William McMaster Murdoch, who was then 80 years old, and I imagine is long past now. Um, because they felt that the film portrayed Murdoch in a very negative light, and it's hard to argue that it didn't. I mean, if you look at the film, it shows him taking a bribe from Cal Hockley, and then about 20 minutes later, as the panic is unfolding, he accidentally, or maybe not accidentally, shoots the character Tommy Ryan, and then in shame and remorse, he salutes Chief Officer Wilde and commits suicide. Now, I think it was a mistake to show that with a historic character. And here's the thing: Cameron's defended it. He insists that Murdoch was shown as helping passengers, and in the final scene in the film where Rose is envisaging the grand staircase, Murdoch is shown as one of the heroic figures there. Nevertheless, it's quite a striking scene, and I think it's a bit of a push for Cameron and the other executives to insist that it wasn't meant to be a bad portrayal because it clearly was. Um, so I totally understand his family feeling uncomfortable and angry about that. Um, as I understand, Murdoch was a strict Scottish Presbyterian, and it's unlikely he would have committed suicide. Unlikely, but not impossible. And this is where things get a little bit complicated. There were first-hand witnesses who survived the disaster said that an officer did commit suicide and there was a shooting incident on board. Problem is, no one knows exactly who that was. There's speculation. It could have been Murdoch, um, to try and control the panic. Um, but there's no evidence that he did do it. So I think what the film should have done is maybe shown the scene, but use some sort of composite unnamed character rather than a historic character. Now it may have happened, it may have happened, but I do think that was a mistake, and it's a pity. It certainly doesn't ruin the film. That would be impossible because it's such a powerful film. But it's a scene that is uncomfortable to watch, knowing that the family were uncomfortable with it, and knowing that we don't know that to be a historic fact. So my personal feeling is they made a mistake by making that a named officer. As for the depiction of Ismay, again, I think Ismay's been treated a raw hand by history. He survived, and being that he was the owner of White Star Line, he was inevitably seen as the great villain, as the wealthy CEO who survived when his ship, most of its crew and passengers went down. And Ismay spent the rest of his life, I believe he died in the 1930s, living as basically a recluse in rural Ireland. And I do hope if another film is made, and nothing will surpass that 1997 film, but if another Titanic film is ever made, I hope just to balance things out a little bit, they portray Ismay in a more sympathetic light. I refuse to believe he pushed past women and children, or he tried to bribe officers or anything like that. In fact, some reports suggest that Murdoch ordered him onto a lifeboat and he had to obey an officer. I mean, what would be the point of any man sacrificing his life when the ship at that side of the deck was being cleared and there was really no other choice? I mean, yeah. So I think there are two figures that have been maligned by history. One, there was sort of an apology. His nephew said he appreciated the apology, but people will forget that ceremony and they'll remember the scene. And that is a point worth remembering. The power of cinema is immense, and this is a world famous film viewed by millions and millions of people, and it's a striking scene. And some people will go away thinking that was the behavior of some officers. So I think film directors, and I take nothing away from James Cameron for the achievements he got from Titanic. Nevertheless, they're in a powerful position, and I think to use a historic character in that way. There was another SNL sketch, since I'm on the topic, which portrayed Captain Smith dressing as a woman. Now, obviously, it was intended as parody, but again, to use a named person, some people might say I have no sense of humor, but I personally don't like that, to basically smear an actual person. It may be that Smith kind of lost his mind a little bit. That's a possibility, but no way was he did he. That's and we know that's not historically true. Nevertheless, it's a bit of a I think it's disrespectful, and I do think that simply when we're talking about real historic figures, directors need to be tread carefully because families are still alive. People who have connections, blood connections to these people. I mean, put it this way: if my great great grandfather was maligned in a film, I wouldn't be too happy about it, even if I didn't know them directly. It would definitely make me uncomfortable. So let me know your thoughts about that. About by the way, my parents live in that part of Scotland and Dumfries and Galloway. My father's always mentioned that his family were that was quite a big thing in the local area because there's a local statue to William McMaster Murdoch. He died at 39, and he was very much seen as one of the heroes of the Titanic until those depictions. So let me know your thoughts. Do film directors have a responsibility to treat real historic people with truth? I think they do. I think they do. I appreciate a film director is not a documentarian and there is artistic license, but I don't think there should be artistic license with someone's character. Although, like I say, Cameron insists that that wasn't the portrayal. I think the jury's out on that. Let me know your thoughts.